IBD is not random. It's an inflammatory process with very predictable patterns. And in this video today, I'm going to be walking you through the 4 stages of IBD. Now, during this time, you're going to learn what the 4 stages are and how you actually develop Crohn's and colitis. We're going to talk about what happens to your body in each stage so that you can understand what's actually happening to your body right now. You're going to learn what your odds are of reversing this disease, which oftentimes is actually very high, contrary to popular belief. And of course, we're going to discuss some natural solutions for your IBD. Now, if you don't know me, my name is Josh Deck. I'm an IBD specialist, medical lecturer, and physician's consultant, and I do videos just like this so you can learn how to reverse your IBD, because the world is wrong about Crohn's and colitis, and the truth is you don't have to live with this forever. Like, you're not stuck. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you the 4 stages of IBD, so Crohn's and colitis. First things first, I'm going to lay these out for you before we get to the fancy board here. First thing, I want to talk about what the 4 stages are. I'm going to break them down for you bit by bit. Now, the first thing, we're looking at an acute response, a chronic response. The third stage is immune-mediated, and stage 4 is what we're calling immune collapse. And where you're at really determines your level of success in reversing your IBD. The further along the stages you are, the harder it is to come back. It's not saying it's impossible, but the further we get, stage 1, 2, 3, 4, the more unlikely it is you may make a full recovery. But I've seen 99 and 100% recoveries many, many times. So nothing is lost, I promise you that. So I'm going to break down each stage. I'm going to walk you through what those symptoms are, or you can look to know where I'm at in that stage. We're even going to walk through some testing you can do to help determine what stage you're at. And then, of course, I'm just going to wrap it all up for you with each stage as we go along. If this feels a bit too technical, don't be afraid to rewind, come back, or take notes, or take what I'm saying and run it into ChatGPT, right? Because this is important information, and sometimes when things feel overwhelming or too technical, it can go over our heads to the point where screw it, I don't want to bother. This information will change your life. It'll change your conversations with your doctor. It's going to change your outcomes. I'm going to keep it as simple as I can, but there are some little technicalities in there that might feel overwhelming. Bear with me. I promise it's worth it. Let's talk about stage 1. The first stage is going to be what we're calling acute. An acute inflammatory response is just like any other inflammatory response. It's short term, it's going to be sudden onset, or you hit a critical mass. So I describe the development of IBD really 2 ways. One, it's like you woke up with it. A couple of days, weeks, or months, you went from perfectly healthy to horribly ill. The other way is more the long term, where you had some inflammation or some irritation in your gut, you had IBS type symptoms, gas bloat, that progressively got worse over many, many years or even decades until it hit a critical mass where you've got blood in your stool or something. You go to your doctor, they go, look, yeah, it's Crohn's colitis. It's either acute onset or it's going to be acute after a long period of time where it hit the critical mass and now you have these symptoms which kind of tipped over the edge, so to speak, or the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will. So here's what we're looking at. Let's talk about some symptoms. These are very important to understand because symptoms do change as you progress down the stages. The first symptoms we're going to be looking at is going to be things like blood, diarrhea, even constipation, which is less common in Crohn's colitis, but not impossible. We're going to see things like your mucus, sharp pains. So these sharp, acute stabbing pains in different areas of your body. It's common to have them lower right, lower left, or lower across. Maybe you're even getting some fevers. Well, ultimately, this is going to be like a first-time episode or a relatively new onset of these symptoms, which are a progressive or worsened version of your last symptoms. So think of it like I used to have IBS, now I have IBD. I used to have gas and bloat, constipation, diarrhea, now I've got blood, ulcerations, etc. Okay? Those are going to be our symptoms. The history we're going to be looking at. History is interesting because we don't always know what happened. So we're either going to say you knew your history or you don't know your history. So we'll call it known or unknown. And here's what this means. Known or unknown exposure to a toxin. Well, I went out traveling and ate some questionable street meat. Or I went swimming in the river, swallowed some water, got really sick. I took antibiotics and my gut popped off. I had an incredibly stressful, traumatic event and everything got worse. I used NSAIDs like ibuprofen, massive amounts for a month and started bleeding. That's your history. So you may know some of these things at this root or what started the gut issue cascade. You might not, and that's okay. But this is going to be your stage 1 acute. Now, when you look at your symptoms you're testing, you go to your doctor or maybe you go on your own. You might look at what's called calprotectin. You're all familiar with that right now. you're watching, you know calprotectin. That's going to be a byproduct of your white blood cells called neutrophils. When they're in the area, they're active, and just like you, when you work out, you sweat. Well, when your neutrophils are in the area doing stuff, they produce calprotectin as a byproduct. So they produce this, call it like exhaust, like sitting from a car. So the higher it is, the more neutrophil activity. The higher your calprotectin, the higher your immune response in that local level. You might see elevations on your blood work. You can look at what's called CRP or ESR. This is going to be your C-reactive protein, very common sort of systemic inflammatory marker, or erythrocyte sedimentation rate, another systemic marker on your blood work. And your doctors can measure for this stuff. Maybe you do a GI map. Your doctor won't do one, but they might do like a stool PCR test, it's called. In that PCR, you all remember that from 2020. And what they do is they replicate all the DNA and go look at the microbes you have. It gives us a better idea to see what's going on. Now, if you have acute infections, you might see some of this. Your doctor's looking for these, we'll call them pathogens: Salmonella, Varicella, Klebsiella, some sort of parasitic infection they might be looking for. You can test for some of that stuff. Maybe you do a stool sample and send it to a private lab, or instead of measuring 3 or 5 toxic pathogens, maybe they're checking your entire biome, all your good guys, bad guys, and showing overgrowth. But when you're in an acute stage like this, you are not going to have more long-term or chronic features. Okay, you're not going to have the chronic features. You're not going to see scarring. You're not going to see cryptitis. You're not going to see abscesses, ulcerations. It's going to be more like inflammation. And also, you're not going to see, I'm just going to abbreviate, what's called architectural distortion. And that is, if your bowel has this nice pattern to it, architectural distortion is literally changes to the lining or the morphology, so to speak, of your gut. It's going to look different architecturally speaking. That's what we call that. So those are going to be your acute stage. Now, if you're here right now, it's not likely that you are in the acute stage. What's happening, because this has been going on for long enough, you sought treatment, what's going to be likely happening here is you're going to be in the chronic stage. How are we defining chronic? You're going to be seeing certain things like flares in remission. They're going to be cycling. I'm in a flare, I reach remission. I'm back in a flare, I'm back in remission. This is happening on and off. You're going to have your classic symptoms ongoing, like bloating, fatigue, nutrient deficiencies. Maybe you're experiencing whatever ongoing symptoms. But when we're defining chronic, per medical definition, it's going to be conditions lasting 1 year or more, requiring ongoing medical attention or treatment, or something that limits the activity of your daily life, or both. So 1 year of ongoing, or something that limits you, or both. That's the medical definition of chronic. But you have these ongoing symptoms, flare, remission, back and forth. Maybe it's been a year for you, maybe it's been 20 years for you. Anywhere you're at, you're in this chronic stage. The problem is that we talked about that calprotectin. Typically, we're gonna see that persistently elevated. It's gonna be kind of ongoing issue that you're dealing with. We talked about some of these crypts and folds in the bowel. Maybe you have some distortion, higher levels of inflammation. Again, you might actually see some of that architecture changing when your doctor does your colonoscopies, endoscopies. They go, yeah, there's a lot of scar tissue. That can be a problem. We might see what's called granulomas. Now, a granuloma, it's only present in something like 15 to 36% of Crohn's cases. What you get is all these macrophages, these blood cells, which kind of cluster together. And phage is like Pac-Man. So what happens is these blood cells actually like go to eat whatever that thing is, and they all end up clustering together. And these are granulomas. And what happens, we can sometimes see these, and again, 15 to 36% of Crohn's. The problem is, these are designed to eat things, bad things. But if your doctor looks at them, if they biopsy, which is actually very rare, it's not standard practice in Crohn's to biopsy these because it's considered not an infectious issue. They say, well, it's not like there's a pathogen, there's nothing around it. And so what they say, they call these non-caseating. So I'm just gonna put non-caseating. And what that means is the inside isn't like necrotic, there's nothing really breaking down, it's kind of just a firm thing. They go, well, it can't be attacking something, there's nothing that we see in the middle. They don't bother biopsying it. So if these guys are trying to eat a pathogen, a toxin, something we don't know of or don't have in our system, they go, wow, we're not gonna bother testing it. So it's not actually standard practice to biopsy these granulomas, these clusters of cells that should be eating pathogens, to try to see what it is they're eating. Make that make sense. But I digress. So we have this high calprotectin, we have distortion, we have these granulomas. You might, again, those architectural changes, maybe you have visible ulcers or what's called pseudopolyps. So where you get like scar tissue that can like project, looks like little fingers and gnarls and stuff that can actually project. Maybe you've got some of that going on. There's all kinds of things that we can see. You might have strictures, you might have nutrient deficiencies, commonly B12, iron, zinc, that type of stuff, because that's going to be a malabsorption issue. So this is your stage 2 chronic. We're in flared remission cycling, elevated levels, possibly granulomas, ongoing symptoms, ulcers, strictures, fistulas, changes of the actual tissue because it's been persisting. That's a chronic stage 2. Now what happens? You've gone from stage 1, it was acute. Some people right away can jump into all these changes, ulcers, etc. almost immediately. It technically doesn't meet the chronic definition, but it's presenting chronically because you have such an extreme level of wear and tear. And so it's not uncommon to sort of skip some of these rungs depending on what your immune system sort of has beforehand, what the status of your immune system is before the infection or the thing that makes you sick. Keeping in mind there's 3 reasons we get sick, ever. The first is going to be toxins. So pesticides, chemicals, mycotoxins or mold toxins, heavy metals, preservatives, all emulsifiers, food chemicals, all that stuff is toxic. Chronically high stress, chronically high blood sugar is toxic to your system. The second, deficiencies, vitamins, minerals, amino acids. It might be fresh air, sunlight, exercise, lack of sweating, basic things that you need to thrive, right? Your gut-brain connection, that nervous system, if you have deficient activity or deficiency of regulation, you'll also get sick. So it kind of fits under that umbrella. The third thing we're looking at is microbes, which is going to be some kind of bacteria, fungi, virus, or parasite. Yeah, we don't check to see the toxin. These macrophages, or these guys are trying to sort of eat in the granuloma. We don't look at the microbes. We don't biopsy it. It's not standard practice, and I believe it should be. But they make a lot of generalizations and say, well, there's non-infectious. Crohn's is non-infectious. That's why we don't bother. But I disagree. So this is your stage 2. Now when we're looking at this, the stage 2 chronic, you've gone from acute, a short instance, to chronic. You now have these changes. It's ongoing, flares remission. You're going to see structural damage. That means you're at stage 2 or further. So if you've seen any of these things on your colonoscopies, endoscopies, whatever scopes you've had done or imaging, you're stage 2 or further. Now it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean it's all lost. It just means it's going to take more time to heal, but you still can. So the stage 3 that we're talking about next, stage 3, this is where we're separating the autoimmune question, because it's often considered autoimmune. If you've watched me or listened to me more than once or twice before, you know I believe the autoimmune thing is a complete sham. And I've got tons of studies and interpretations on those to prove that, but here's what we're looking at. Stage 3 is now something that the Crohn's Colitis Foundation, the Mayo Clinic, and the CDC have actually all recognized as now being immune mediated. They still put it under the autoimmune umbrella. I believe it's because there's $100 billion worth of autoimmune drugs they sell every year, but I digress. We're going to call this immune mediated. What does that mean? Well, if it's not autoimmune, it's immune mediated. This is going to be symptoms you'll experience like food reactivity. So you eat something, one day it causes you a problem, the next it doesn't, because your immune system's jumping around on how it responds to that food. Maybe you're experiencing histamine intolerance, or it could be called MCAS. This is called mast cell activation syndrome. These mast cells, these are the guys that are producing all these histamine type responses. They're the ones who are doing all the work. So you might be experiencing things like rashes, hives, itchiness. Maybe you consume fermented foods that are high in histamine. Your kimchi's, sauerkrauts, yogurts. Maybe you're having cured meats, vinegars, things from a can. Like, I keep getting these issues. I get bloated, I get moody, I get rashes or hives. I get sweaty, I get hives. All these things can be histamine intolerances or MCAS, mast cell activation. Maybe you're experiencing things like brain fog, and that can be chronic inflammation, neuroinflammation. It can be the neurotransmitters all screwed up. You might have ongoing skin issues like psoriasis, eczema, dryness, itchiness, urticaria, whatever skin issues. You might be having symptoms that are actually triggered very commonly by, and when I say food, I'm not talking about Taco Bell, guys. That's not food, okay? We're talking about real foods. But if food and stress commonly trigger your symptoms and throw you into a flare, you're probably closer to the stage 3. Think of it this way. I'm gonna back this up a little. Stage 1 is acute. You got a bad day. You're a little bit stressed out. You shake it off, you're fine, you go home. That's the equivalent of you catching the sniffles. A couple of days or a week, your immune system takes care of it, it's out. But you're here right now, watching or listening to this, which means you're not in acute. Your body didn't get rid of it. So you're probably chronic or further. So let's go to stage 2, you're chronic, a year or more. You're having a stressful day at work. Every day is stressful for a year or more. What do? You can't really shake that one off, so you start to get really upset. You're more irritable. You start to, I don't know, you kick things, hit things, you start to damage your toes. There's little architectural changes to your body because you're having a bit of a stressful day, okay? Stressful year. That's stage 1 and 2. Stage 3, your stressful year has turned into years. Your stressful reaction has now turned into freakouts, anxiety, panic attacks. The mailman comes to deliver and you jump and punch him in the face by accident. This is your immune-mediated response. Your immune system is freaking out. It's been stressed and overstressed for months and years, and things compound, and now it's hyper-reactive. You've got MCAS, brain fog, joint issues, joint pain, all these things, chronic fatigue ongoing now. Maybe you're somebody who's got symptoms that started not so bad and they're progressing over time. They're getting worse and worse and worse, and you're more reactive. Maybe you're more unpredictable with certain things. Maybe, again, you got this known history of the IBD, but you have this rapid onset change of symptoms, but you've skipped stages. You're like, oh dude, I don't think I was ever just chronic. Like right away, I was perfectly healthy, then one day went to my doctor with Colitis and all these things. Sometimes that can happen. Doesn't typically, but you know, there's a lot of history missing there. Okay? We have to understand this can be tested for. You can test to see what stage you're in. If you're in this freak out immune system stage, your immune system is highly imbalanced. It's hyperreactive, overreactive, somewhere between stage 2 and 3, right? Between that chronic and this immune mediated response, we start to see things like strictures, ulcers, fistulas, things where your body almost seems like it's attacking itself or it's breaking down, but it's not actually autoimmune. Like your body's not attacking itself. It's just that its defense mechanisms happen to be breaking things down because they're just local. Call it like being stuck in the crossfire, so to speak. Your immune system is trying to attack something so much the inflammation actually breaks down your tissues, but your body never attacked it. Right? It's like a road worker coming in to try to patch a pothole, but instead of patching the pothole keeps getting deeper. And so what do? You bring in 1 million road workers. And because there's so many of them stepping around on the road, all the pavement wears and tears and collapses. You didn't attack the pavement. It's just in the process of you trying to fix the thing, everything around it got worse. That's kind of our immune-mediated response. And so you can test for some of this stuff. You can actually run specific labs. Some of them your doctor will do, some of them they will not, and that's just part of, advocating for yourself. You can look at things like zonulin. You can test these in stool samples and GI maps. This is your leaky gut protein. Zonulin is the protein that your body produces to create leaks either deliberately or in response to inflammation. Because leaky gut's a defense mechanism, right? Something comes in, your body goes, oh, we don't want that. Open the cells, bring water in, poop it out. That's best case. But chronic inflammation, those cells spread further. Now things leak into your gut, but things also leak from your gut into your blood. This is a problem. If you have other things like anti-gliadin, it's anti-gluten protein, elevated IgAs. So that's going to be your immunoglobulin A. If this is elevated in blood, or even you can see this decreased, and this is going to be in your stool sample. So your we call it secretory IgA, that immune response that's responsible on a local, like mucosal level, the lining of your gut. If that's depleted, this could be an immune-mediated response, theoretically, right? Other things we can look at, if you have systemic chronic inflammation markers in your blood, you can also measure imbalances in what's called Th1, 2, and 17. These are going to be immune responses, very specific panels that you can do. It's like an advanced cytokine or advanced T cell panel that your doctor may run if you put up enough of a fuss, or just pay the couple $100 and do it yourself. But again, you might be having some of these other detectable immune imbalances. Other things we can start to look at here as well. We did talk about high histamines in some of the chronic stuff. We can definitely have it here, or rather in the immune-mediated stuff. It's not impossible in chronic because your system's sensitive, but that's that gray area where we're sort of crossing the bridge from stage to stage, so keep that in mind. Other things you can actually look at and maybe even run testing for. If you've got issues with DAO, That's diamine oxidase, like you're not producing enough to break down histamines on your own. Again, mast cell symptoms with flushing. You can run these panels. Ask your doctor. I'm actually going to show you another panel in the next one called CD4 and CD8 I'll talk about. You can get your doctor to run some of these panels to see what's going on with your immune system. But here's the summary of it. Stage 3 immune mediated. Your immune system is hyperreactive, overactivating, and it doesn't typically appear to be towards pathogens like food, to stress, to anything. It's like a hyper response for no reason. That's going to be immune mediated. We went from the sniffles or a chronic, like a bad day, to a chronically bad, stressful year, to now it's been years and we're freaking out. We don't know what to do. What comes after a freak out stage? If you've ever known anybody to go through extreme mental distress, whatever that may be, you have a bad stressful moment, you have long-term chronic stress, you have the freak out, and if you keep being stressed and freaking out, what happens? You just like sit into a corner and rock because like you just can't keep up anymore. This is what we're calling stage number 4. This is going to be immune collapse. Things buckle. Your immune system has been working its ass off for a long time and it just collapses. Unfortunately, you get hit by a car, you either break your legs off, you get fully paralyzed, or it hurts a little bit, you walk it off, go to physiotherapy. What I'm saying with this analogy is that some people can get a toxin, a microbe, an infection, a deficiency of some kind, which will contribute to disease. But based on where you're at, what your immune system is doing, your body as a whole, based on those factors, you might jump the rungs and just like go straight into some sort of immunodeficient or immune collapse. So we're going to break this immune collapse down to 3 categories. We're going to have what we're going to call autoimmune, we're going to have immune deficiency, and then we're going to talk a little bit about CIRS, or chronic inflammatory response syndrome. These are the 3 sort of buckets we're putting these in. Autoimmune, this is the assumption. We have these 4 stages of IBD. Your doctor has been trained to assume you're number 4 right away. No test, no guess, no nothing. This is just what it is. It's autoimmune, unquestionably. Your body's attacking itself. You know, there's very little to any actual evidence when you really look at it that it's truly autoimmune. We actually break down these antibodies. First of all, it's not super common your doctor will actually test for antibodies. They just assume it's autoimmune. Oh, it's Crohn's, you're inflamed in the gut, or it's colitis, you got these things, it's autoimmune. They don't actually test your autoantibodies. They don't know if it's autoimmune. And even when you have antibodies, antibodies are to external factors. So you build an antibody to the flu virus every year, right? No big deal. An autoantibody is your body attacking itself. Even the antibodies that are classified as autoantibodies may not be attacking your own body. So we're calling it autoimmune unquestionably when your doctor probably hasn't even tested those antibodies, and if they did, they might not be attacking you, because those autoantibodies can also be attacking other things, and again, by bystander effect, it's a bit of a friendly fire, you might see some damage from it, but they're not strictly autoimmune. So to support and say every condition is autoimmune when 40 to 60% of cases, or I should say 50% of cases more accurately, have little to no antibodies at all, and some, even fewer, will have autoantibodies, it's absurd. So we're calling it autoimmune anyway, but let's assume that's one of the things that could be possible, okay? The next one is immunodeficiency. So what we're seeing in deficiency, you're someone who's prone to frequent infections. Your defenses are down. Can't take care of yourself. Even though you have all this damage, this inflammation going on inside of your gut, your bowels, whatever it may be, your inflammatory markers might be low. Some of them could be low. That might be a stage 4 where your immune system has been trying with all this damage, it just collapses. It can't defend anymore. You might see recurrent gut pathogens. So you're someone who comes in, you do your GI map, that stool sample, and you constantly see, you keep going after this Klebsiella and Citrobacters and all these, quote, bad guys. C. diff infections, chronically recurring, isn't always immune collapse by any means, but use it as an example. They keep coming back. You can't get rid of them. Why? Because you lack the defenses to do so. Your immune system can't keep up. Now there's more to that picture, like maybe you just lack the microbes. So I'm not saying if you get recurrent C. diff, you're in stage 4. I want to be very clear about that. But you have these recurrent pathogens you can't keep away. That can be a big sign. You might find yourself, again, like we just talked about, with low fecal secretory IgA. And again, you can see that on a stool sample GI map. If this secretory, this mucosal immune system, so to speak, is chronically low, that could be a sign or an indicator of immune collapse or immunodeficiency. But there is some testing you can actually do. I mentioned these a little bit earlier, sort of spilled the beans earlier. You can test what's called CD4 and CD8. Now these guys will typically get, you might get the markers anywhere from 1 to about 3.5. And there's a ratio. There's typically a 2-to-1 ratio of these. This is what they'll do the markers. So the normal ratio is 2 CD4 cells for every 1 CD8. That's kind of considered the normal. Now you don't know what I'm talking about right now, that's okay. Ask your doctor for the blood work, they can see where you're at. The problem is, if your CD8 cells get too high, your CD4 cells get too low, and it skews your ratio out of whack, this could be a sign of depletion, showing immunosuppression. The same kind of immunosuppression you would see, I'm not saying you have these conditions, it's just the same type of thing you would see in these immunodeficient conditions, like HIV and AIDS, like mold toxicity, or again, what we're calling CIRS, or chronic inflammatory response syndrome, we'll talk about in a sec. You might have some of this immunocollapse. Cancers, chronic inflammation, immune exhaustion can show a lot of the same stuff. This is our immune collapse. So again, we're talking about 3 sections of immune collapse. Number 1 is immunodeficiency or autoimmune, 2 immunodeficient, 3 is CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome. There is protocol. I think it's Metagenics or one of them had actually come out with a questionnaire. You can just Google online, like CIRS questionnaire. Do I have it? There's all kinds of symptoms that got to be categorized and marked up for points. Maybe there is fatigue, memory issues, electrical sensitivity, so Wi-Fi, EMF, static shocks, those types of things. You might have skin rashes, your flares come and go with no pattern, rhyme, or reason. But you can actually check out the Shoemaker protocol, it's called. It's sort of the gold standard, is the Shoemaker protocol. You can get questionnaires from there to say, hey, do I have CIRS? But one of the criteria is confirmed mold toxin or biotoxin illness. That's part of the confirmation. So they'll require like an ERMI test, we call that, ERMI, or some kind of mycotoxin to say, do you have a confirmed exposure to mold? That's like the first criteria. So there's a lot to it. But you can look at blood, symptoms, different markers, but again, go to Shoemaker for that, okay? Here's what I want to do. I know this has gone on a bit longer than our usual lives. So I'm going to wrap things up here in a moment, but I want to give you something absolutely critical to all of this. We have 4 stages of IBD development. Some people will get unlucky due to, what can I use as an analogy here? You're jumping on a trampoline. Better yet, you're jumping off a roof. One of you has osteoporosis, but you don't know it. And your other friend is perfectly healthy and a strength athlete. You both jump off the roof. One of you shatters your leg, shatters your hips, never walks again. The other maybe sprains their ankle and they're perfectly fine. Based on the underlying causes that you are or are not aware of inside of your system, the predisposing factors and susceptibilities can determine how quickly you jump from one to the other. Any short-term inflammation is going to be acute. The problem is with IBD and these defense mechanisms or the predisposing factors, some of us present like we're chronic. We start to show some ulcers almost right away. It's like things opened up immediately. There's a lot going on in our world, in our body, which causes our immune systems to be a bit more reactive. But then, again, we get hyperreactive in stage 3, your immune mediated, and then immune collapse. So again, your autoimmune, your immune deficiency, or your CIRS in stage 4. Your doctor looks at you, assesses your symptoms, and go, yep, it's autoimmune. No questions asked. The data doesn't support that. The studies don't support that. The blood work does not support that. Looking at the antibodies and what they do in the research does not support these are autoimmune conditions. They're immune mediated, no doubt, hyperreactive responses, but very rarely is your body attacking itself. Very rarely. The data does not support it. What you need to do is understand and advocate for yourself, because your doctor probably won't listen or won't care because they're educated and you're a dumb dummy, so what do you know, right? IBD is not an accident. There are 3 reasons we get sick. Microbes, toxins, deficiencies across the board. They don't even biopsy these granulomas, these clusters of cells to try to see what it is they're attacking. They don't even bother biopsying. They don't do what I would consider as the basic minimum to try to investigate what's going on inside of your body is not standard practice. So the question is, what can we do? Have to identify your root cause. Have to identify your root cause. It can't come from nowhere. I met a woman today I just did a call with, and she had dealt with this. She's 39 years old. This thing came up out of the blue a couple of months ago. Her doctor went, yep, it's ulcerative colitis, or sorry, for her it was Crohn's. It's Crohn's disease, it's autoimmune put you on Tremfya the rest of your life. I've been hearing Tremfya a lot lately. Never heard of it before. I think it's what the pharmaceutical reps are pushing. Because that's how it works. Here's our new drug, push that one. They just throw darts at the board. They don't know. They don't know what's going to be better or worse. They had their first line protocol. They just throw the immunosuppressives. She's 39. Out of the blue, she gets sick. You're not investigating why? It's not genetics. It has to be a toxin, a microbe deficiency, or a combination of all the above. It's not hard, but they're not trained for this. They have a different skill set. Check the symptoms, name it with a diagnosis, give the drug in this order, that standard of care. If you fall out of line or don't do that, you can lose your license. That's what we're living in. This is why you're here right now, advocating for yourself, and I'm here advocating for you. Here's what I want you to know. This isn't a forever thing. Doesn't have to be. So here's what I'm going to tell you right now. You can get help, and we can help. Someone can help. I'm a bit of an odd duck, but hey, I'll hang out with you. See if we can get you some help. Here's how you can do it. If you're watching right now on YouTube, or you're listening on the podcast, and you're saying, Josh, I wish my doctor explained this to me all these years ago. If you're saying for the first time in 15 years or 30 years, I've learned more now in 30 minutes. Help me get help. All you got to do is check the links below in the notes. There's a link there. Send me an email. Ask a question. Schedule a call. We'll see what we can do to get you some help, because these aren't forever conditions. And once you understand stage 1, 2, 3, 4, where you're at, what your body's got going on, what's happening to you right now inside of your body and your system, it tells you what to do about it. It shows you what probability do you have of reversing this condition and not being stuck with it forever. A lot can be done. It's just your doctor is trained. Check the symptoms, check the boxes. Name the disease. Check that's your diagnosis. And then what do? Is we give a drug to manage the symptoms in that standard of care. But we take these, what could be an acute condition, and we treat it that becomes chronic. Right? So we have this chronic inflammatory condition. But then we take these acute treatments, anti-inflammatory suppressives, and then we treat the chronic condition chronically with acute treatments. Tell me if that makes any sense. You get this short-term thing, and you have a long-term problem, so you keep applying short-term, hoping it suppresses and keeps quiet. It doesn't work that way. We need a long-term solution. Guys, that's all we got from you today. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. It's been a pleasure. I know this was a lot, but I'm glad you stuck it out. It's worth it. See you next week.